Humble Nanny notices strange mark on Millionaire's hand. A young woman, Elara, lands what seems like a dream job, a nanny for a lonely millionaire. She thinks it's her ticket to a better life, but she soon notices a strange, almost sinister mark on his hand that becomes an obsession. She doesn't know it yet, but that symbol is the key to a secret so dark it has been buried for generations, and digging it up will either be the last mistake she ever makes or the one thing that sets her free. Section 1. The Setup. Elara always noticed things other people missed. It was both her greatest strength and, in a world that preferred her to be invisible, her secret burden. Raised in a tiny apartment overflowing with books, she'd learned to read people like pages, always looking for the hidden meaning between the lines. But that particular skill doesn't exactly pay the bills. So when a job opened up to be a private nanny for the city's most mysterious millionaire, she jumped at the chance. The man was Alistair Blackwood, a ghost who rattled around a glass and steel mansion that felt more like a museum than a home. His family fortune was ancient, the kind people whispered about. But Alistair himself was a total recluse. He was tall, serious, and moved with a chilling silence. His most telling quirk: he was never ever seen without a pair of pristine leather gloves. Elara's job was simple on paper: care for Leo, Alistair's 8-year-old nephew. The boy was the only survivor of a tragic accident that took his parents, Alistair's younger brother and his wife. Leo was as quiet as the house, preferring his sketchbooks over people. Slowly but surely, Elara's warmth began to draw him out, and the two formed a bond in the sterile silence of the huge estate. Alistair, however, remained a distant, brooding figure, watching her from a distance but never really getting close. Then, one evening, everything changed. Alistair was walking through the library when a heavy book tipped off a high shelf. He shot out a hand to catch it, purely on instinct. In that split second, his glove snagged on the corner of the bookcase and slid down just enough. Elara saw it. It wasn't a scar or a tattoo, but something far more complex. It was a jet-black mark, shaped like a thorny vine twisted around the faint outline of a single rose. The image was burned into her mind before Alistair, with a sharp gasp, yanked his glove back on. His face was a mask of cold fury, but for a split second, Elara saw something else hiding underneath it: pure, terrifying fear. Section 2. The Rising Action. Elara couldn't get the image of the mark out of her head. It felt ancient, symbolic, a piece of a puzzle she hadn't even known existed. Her natural curiosity sharpened into a real obsession. She started watching Alistair, not like an employee, but like a detective. His distance suddenly seemed less like arrogance and more like a wall he'd built to protect something. He started actively avoiding her, changing his route if he saw her in a hallway. You could feel the tension in the house getting thicker every day. Her investigation started in the one place Alistair seemed to both cherish and neglect: the family library. While organizing a dusty shelf, a single yellowed page fell out of a heavy book on European heraldry. It described a forgotten tradition called mourning marks. These weren't tattoos you chose. They were symbols of duty, seared onto the skin of a family's heir to represent a pact made after a great tragedy. The marks were a permanent reminder of a secret they were sworn to take to the grave. Her blood ran cold when she read the description for the House of Valerian, a black rose briar, signifying a beautiful promise poisoned by a violent pact. It was a perfect match. Just how dangerous her search was became terrifyingly clear a few nights later. She was standing just outside Alistair's study when she overheard him on the phone, his voice a low, furious hiss. "The pact is absolute," he said. "The inheritance depends on it." But she's getting too close. She notices everything. Elara froze, her heart hammering. He was talking about her. This wasn't some old family history. This was happening right now. Completely shaken, she turned her attention to the one person at the center of all this: quiet little Leo. She knew kids sometimes hold on to truths that adults try to bury. She found him in the sunroom, scribbling furiously on a piece of paper. As she got closer, she saw he was drawing the exact same symbol from his uncle's hand: the thorny vine, the coiled rose. Her voice was barely a whisper when she asked him what it was. Leo didn't even look up. "It's the mark of the silenced," he mumbled. He said it was from a dark fairy tale his father used to tell him, about a family that made a deal with shadowy men to save their fortune. But the deal cost them their freedom. Her digging didn't go unnoticed. Mrs. Albright, the stone-faced housekeeper who'd worked for the Blackwoods for 40 years, cornered her in the kitchen. "Curiosity is a luxury the help can't afford," she warned, her eyes like ice. "Stop digging." The threat was perfectly clear. That night, Elara came back to her room to find things just slightly out of place, a drawer not quite closed, a book moved on her nightstand. She was being watched. Her role had changed. She wasn't just a nanny anymore. She was a player in a very dangerous game. And yet, through all the fear, her empathy for Alistair grew. She saw the deep sadness in his eyes, the crushing weight he was carrying. She started to realize the mark wasn't a sign of his own evil, but of a burden he'd been forced to carry. She began leaving him small, unspoken kindnesses, a cup of his favorite tea on his desk, a book about grief on a nearby table. One evening, her quiet effort paid off. She found him in the conservatory, staring at his gloved hand as a single tear rolled down his face. In that moment, the gap between the humble nanny and the tormented millionaire just disappeared, replaced by a fragile, unspoken understanding. Section 3. The climax and resolution. The final piece of the puzzle had to be in the one place Alistair always kept locked, his late brother's study. Desperate for the truth, Elara picked the simple lock and slipped inside. The room was a time capsule, untouched. And there, on the desk, was a leather-bound journal. Her hands trembled as she opened it. The pages laid out the horrifying truth. Alistair's brother, Leo's father, was the one who was supposed to get the mourning mark. Their grandfather hadn't just made a bad deal. He'd saved the family from ruin by making a pact with a ruthless criminal syndicate. The mark was the brand of their lifelong servitude, but Alistair's brother had a conscience. He refused the pact and was getting ready to expose the whole operation, no matter what it cost the Blackwood name. To save his idealistic younger brother, Alistair made a devastating choice. He offered to take the mark himself, to carry the burden of the pact in his brother's place. But the syndicate betrayed him. They saw his brother as a loose end and staged the tragic accident that killed him and his wife. Alistair was left with everything: the mark, the guilt, and his orphaned nephew, who he guarded with a fierce, cold desperation. As Elara read the last tear-stained page, a floorboard creaked behind her. Alistair was standing in the doorway, his face pale. He'd seen her. The secret was out. But the explosion of anger she braced for never came. Instead, he just looked exhausted, down to his bones. He didn't deny any of it. He confessed everything, the words pouring out of him as if a dam had finally broken. He explained that his coldness was a shield, a desperate attempt to keep Elara and Leo safe from the syndicate that still had him in its grip. Just having someone else finally know the truth seemed to release a pressure that had been building for years. Elara didn't run. Looking at this broken man, she felt her own transformation lock into place. The shy, observant girl had become a courageous woman. "You don't have to carry this alone anymore," she said, her voice steady and clear. Together they used the information from the journal, names, dates, secret accounts, to orchestrate an anonymous leak to an international journalist. The story created a firestorm, leading to a wave of arrests that shattered the syndicate's leadership and finally cut its ties to the Blackwood family. Slowly, the mansion began to change. Sunlight found its way into corners that had been dark for years. The heavy silence was replaced by the sound of Leo's laughter as Alistair, finally free, taught him how to fly a kite on the lawn. Elara's life was changed forever. She wasn't just the nanny anymore. She was a confidante, a protector, and a part of a new, smaller but infinitely stronger family. A simple observation of a strange mark on a millionaire's hand had unraveled a generational curse, and in doing so wrote a new chapter of healing for them all. Conclusion: stories like this really show how the smallest details can change absolutely everything. If you enjoyed this story, please hit that like button and subscribe for more tales of mystery and transformation. We love bringing these stories to you, and your support helps us keep going. Check out the end screen for another story we think you'll love.